Well, hello to all you retro gaming fans out there, and welcome to yet another installment of Take It or Leave It. Do you know what specific gaming genre I love? Collectathons. Collectathons are rather obvious, since the name actually flat out tells you exactly what they are. You collect things, typically in large sandboxes. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but that's the gist.
And yes, that is me coming up with an excuse to talk about Spyro. Good job, you're catching on. I like you.
Also because it's the year of the dragon in the Chinese zodiac, so yeah. I've been waiting to do the Spyro games on this channel ever since Take It or Leave It began. Not exactly because I view all of the games as man's greatest creation or anything like that, but instead for just how fun these games are to talk about, along with play, of course.
I thought it would also be fun if we covered all of the Crash and Spyro games in order of release at the same time. Mainly because of similar downfalls, and yes, I am on track with the order of release dates. Meaning that Spyro 1 came out after Crash 2, but before Crash 3, so next video is Crash 3. But how exactly did this game come to be?
On February 28th, 1994, a little development team known as Insomniac Games was created. Nowadays, they'd be known for not only Spyro, but Ratchet & Clank, Resistance, and the recent PS4 and PS5 Spider-Man games. But obviously, they would need to walk before they can run. The first game that they've ever made was Disruptor for the PS1. Obviously, their first game didn't do well financially, but it did do well critically, believe it or not. So despite its lacking sales, Ted Price, the founder, and crew were willing to give game making another go, especially when Disruptor was considered the best game that no one ever heard of. So if people that heard of their first attempt really liked it that much, imagine how much better they can do on a second attempt. So they got to work on this new game, and instead of making another Doom clone, they wanted to make something more fantasy. They also wanted to make something family friendly, since the N64 manages to appeal to a younger demographic. They claimed that there were no other kids games on the PS1 at the time.
Right.
Craig Stitt came up with the idea of making a game about a dragon because they happened to be his favorite mythical creature, and everyone got to work. They went through a lot of different ideas for how to approach this game, specifically the dragon's size. Eventually, they ended up with the tiny dragon we all came to know. Fun fact, the original name of the character was Pete, and he was the color green. They had to change it for pretty obvious reasons. That's when they soon settled with the color purple. They made him purple to help him not blend into the background so easily, and of course, make him stand out.
After all of that, their new game titled Spyro the Dragon was officially released on September 9th, 1996. Exactly 2 years after Crash Bandicoot 1 first came out. How weird is that? That both of these franchises started on the exact same date. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, this is not going to be the only major coincidence between these two franchises.
Spyro ended up selling not that well at first. Whenever it did get attention, critics didn't necessarily love it. Basically a very bad start. Fortunately for them, sales did manage to drastically improve by '98's holiday season, and critics were praising it, selling 5 million copies worldwide. So yeah, this was definitely a massive step up in sales for them.
Now that we're done with the backstory of how Spyro became Spyro, it is high time for us to really begin this adventure. So without further ado, Spyro the Dragon.
The game begins in the world of dragons. One of the elders is being interviewed about the Dragon Kingdom and all the treasure and shit. Then the interviewer brings up the main villain of this game, Gnasty Gnorc. Another elder steps in to talk about Gnasty himself, calling him simple, no threat to the Dragon Kingdom, and what was that last one?
Besides, he is ugly.
Oh yeah, that.
Unfortunately for the dragons, Gnasty Gnorc was actually watching this interview live, and because of that 4th grade smack talk, he turns every single dragon in the kingdom into crystal. That is, except for Spyro.
And yeah, that's the whole intro. That's really how it plays out. So time for me to tell you why I think the story in this game is pretty fucking bad.
The number one problem for this intro with setting up this game's quest is that it simply leaves too many questions. Yes, I am aware that this is a kiddie platformer collectathon here, but these questions I have give the game's intro way too many plot holes. First off, if the dragons knew just how dangerous Gnasty Gnorc can be, why don't they just imprison him? Some may think that I'm misinterpreting this. You may argue that the dragons didn't know and that's why they called him no threat. But the thing is, do you really think that Gnasty put himself on that remote island? Pretty sure that's not the case. And if I'm right, then why was the dragon talking smack about him on live TV without thinking about any possible repercussions? Don't really know why the dragons don't just imprison him so he can't do any magic. Why do all the dragons know who Spyro is? This is pretty minor, but I always questioned that. Is Spyro a prince? Is he king or an heir to something? Or maybe even a dictator? I don't know. Furthermore, how the hell does Spyro not get crystallized? Seriously, just how? They never explain.
Now I would say that the manual of this game clears things out, except for the fact that it doesn't.
The manual puts in extra backstory on Gnasty Gnorc himself, saying that he hates his own reflections and the gems and the dragons insult him and mistreat him and blah 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 blah, and that's why he's evil. First off, if this information was intended, why isn't it in the game? I buy a game to use the controller, not to read it. Second off, if Gnasty Gnorc hated his reflection, then why on earth does he have a big fucking portrait of himself? See what I mean? What the manual tells you doesn't properly connect well with the game. I mean, they explained that the reason why Spyro wasn't crystallized was because he was, quote, playing hooky, even if in the game he is quite clearly chasing a fucking sheep.
But just when you think that I'm done, I'm simply not. Because there is one last negative to talk about with this game's story. The villain himself, Gnasty Gnorc. He fucking sucks.
Gnasty Gnorc is just like almost every other family-friendly fantasy creature villain. He's big, he's angry and ugly without any personality whatsoever. He doesn't even have a lot of screen time. The only lines that he has are in the intro, and it's only 3. The goddamn interviewer, a character that you never see on screen, mind you, has more lines than the main villain. Because of this, Gnasty Gnorc has no real chance to shine. I'd argue that the most mandatory element in a story is the characters, and if there is going to be a villain, you have to give them more screen time than this in order to allow for them to leave a bigger impact. There are tons of other games that do this very thing. Rayman 2, the Uncharted series, minus the first one, the majority of the Mario games, and even the next 2 games in the same franchise, Spyro 2 and 3. Gnasty Gnorc just feels like a villain from one of those direct-to-DVD Tinkerbell movies. Very weak villain. Anyway, let's move on to the main guy. As for Spyro himself, he's okay in this game. People really hate this version of Spyro because of his voice, and yeah, I can't really blame them. Spyro really does sound cocky in this game.
Looks like I've got some things to do. What about Gnasty Gnorc? I'm going after him. Where's Gnasty Gnorc? I'll torch him. Afraid? Of what? Bring him on. I think I smell a barbecue. destiny. I just want to kick some...
Just toast those enemies and collect the treasure!
But what I'd really like to do is get out of this swamp. Oh no. How about charge them and flame them? We are dragons after all. I'll be done when I've toasted that nasty Nork. I'd rather flame the fools. That's me, alright. Don't worry, the only one who's gonna be trapped is him. Hold your horns, here comes Spyro. I'd be shaking in my Nork boots if I were him. They better be on the lookout for me. You're toast, Nork.
But it doesn't exactly bother me too much, mainly because it does feel like the character they were going for anyway. That being more of a sorta go-getter. But like I said, if you do hate Spyro in this game, I honestly cannot blame you.
So yeah, Spyro 1 story. It's not very good. But the story doesn't really matter a whole lot now, does it? What really matters is the game design itself.
Spyro is a dragon, which means that in order for him to be a dragon, he has to act like one. A small one to be exact. You use the D-pad/analog stick to move around, X to jump, X twice to glide, circle to breathe fire, hold square to charge, hold triangle to look around, L1 and R1 to roll, and L2 and R2 to move the camera. The moveset and controls in general are pretty good and do the job. I hear a lot of people declaring these as clunky, and sure, using the triggers for the camera instead of the right stick can feel strange at first, but once you get used to it, it works. Not the most satisfying controls in the world, but it works. The jumping is decent, the flame is fun to use on enemies, charging through everything is a blast, and the gliding is a great mechanic for traversing levels. Especially when you get the chance to glide long distances. It's not complicated or anything, but it doesn't need to be. It's cool to look at. The only move that doesn't work well is the roll. Jesus Christ, is this move useless.
In fact, let's play a game. Guess how many times I've used the roll in this entire game. No, seriously, guess. Time's up. Once.
Yep, the one time I used it was at the very beginning where I was showing off the moves, and then I never used it ever again. No one really talks about this move, and yeah, it's really fucking useless. The only time where it can be useful is in Toasty's level with the sheepdogs. But even then, the more efficient way is to just flame them, wait for them to jump up, and then flame them again. But anyway, these held up well. As for abilities, you have Flying, Supercharge, and Super Flame. Since Spyro could only glide in the levels, Insomniac thought, fuck it, and have him flying in these levels for unexplained reasons. Compared to the other plot holes though, this is one that I would say doesn't matter. Why can Spyro fly here and nowhere else? Who cares? It's fun. The flying controls are fun. They are a tad bit on the sensitive side, but it's very responsive. I'll talk more about these flight levels later on. As for supercharging and flaming, both are fun gimmicks. I would say that supercharging is more fun with the insane amount of speed you can gain and being able to perform ridiculous jumps in height and distance, but flaming a shit ton of metal that you weren't able to destroy is satisfying. Spyro 1's gimmicks are very fun. Spyro 1 is a collectathon, which means that you spend your time traversing around sandboxes and collecting things. You go around charging into chests, collecting gems, blowing up metal crates with fireworks or cannons, kicking the asses of Nasty Nork's henchmen, free the Elder Dragons, and retrieving eggs. That's basically how it works. The main collectibles are the crystallized dragons. You walk up to them, a cutscene plays, the dragon gives advice or says,
"Thank you for releasing me."
It's also how you save your game. That's really it. The gems are the other main collectible in this game and work in the exact same way as the music notes in Banjo-Kazooie. There's a certain number of them in the level, collect them all and you get laid. But you do get them from enemies too, which means that if you want all of the gems, then you have to kill all the enemies. Lastly are the egg thieves. There are these annoying blue shits that don't even run fast while stealing the eggs.
Oh, that's it. I'm gonna fucking murder you, little asshole. I'm gonna penetrate you with Spyro's horns.
Compared to the other collectibles, the dragon eggs do require the most effort to get, and that's good. But then they just straight up abandoned them after the third world. Why? They aren't amazing experiences to get or anything, but I never and still don't understand why the eggs get completely ditched halfway through the game. Insomniac, you can't just make an extra collectible only for it to be forgotten about. Am I the only one that has a problem with this?
But that's not my problem with Spyro 1. My main problem with Spyro 1 is the gameplay and how it's handled.
Now, before I get all critical here, let's first talk about what the gameplay does right. The game does a great job taking advantage of proper exploration in the levels. Yes, this is more of a level design thing, but it's still worth mentioning here. Some of the crystal dragons and gems get hidden, forcing you to go properly search for them, and I do like that. These aren't that huge anyway, so I don't mind not having an ability for finding gems. There are some actual brain-scratching secrets at times, even if some of those secrets are a little cryptic. By far the worst of them is the upper level hidden in Haunted Castle. You have to supercharge through the center room, out through the door on the far right, jump to the entrance, run across the entrance, and land on a platform off-screen.
Oh, fucking K!
But for the most part, it's pretty good. The gems are also handled well. They're not deep or anything, but they do feel good to collect. Even if the sound effect doesn't sound all that beautiful, and maybe having a separate reward for killing the enemies instead of gems might be better. It's still well handled though.
Alright, small talk over. Time for me to talk about the problems.
Remember my very broad description on collectathons in the very beginning of the video? Well, Spyro the Dragon takes that broad description far too literally. My main problem with Spyro 1 is that the dragons are simply not good collectibles. Now sure, they look cool when you free them, I guess, but the issue is that you save every single crystal dragon in the game the exact same way over and over and over and over and over again. Walk up to them, play a cutscene, and move on. That's it. Sure, there is extra challenge for the ones that you actively need to look for, but once you find them, it's the same song and dance.
However, I do understand why there are some people who don't mind this. I can kinda see how a more simple pick-up-and-play experience might appeal to others a lot more. Not me, though.
Sure, this does follow things in a simple and easy-to-digest package, and it's exactly how I described collectathons in the beginning of the video, but that's only a description, not what I actually like about them. Collectathons are more than just collecting things in my opinion. Collectathons are about semi-open worlds, memorable characters, great cartoony visuals, fun missions to make collecting the main collectible very satisfying and earned. That's what's great about collectathons to me, and Spyro 1 didn't get a deep enough understanding for that.
And I know what you're thinking. Max Rabbit, this is just a game of its time. Of course the gameplay isn't gonna be deep. Well, Spyro 1 came out in 1998. You wanna know what else came out in 1998? Banjo-Kazooie. I rest my case.
I mean, every dragon in the last world are ones that you've saved before, so it isn't even 80 like what the game tries to tell you. Okay, I know, a little bit too harsh. Apparently they try to face Nasty Nork themselves, and that's why they got recrystallized.
Okay, what? You mean to tell me that 6 full-size dragons that can breathe fucking fire and fly, mind you, can't take down one green douchebag, probably half the size of them, but the tiny dragon can? What's wrong with you guys? You're so bad at protecting yourselves.
Just a couple more things to talk about before we move on. Let's move on to the health system. Sparks the Dragonfly is your health bar throughout the game. He kind of works like Aku Aku from the Crash games, a smaller character floating around a medium character. Thing is though, Sparks is way easier to keep. Not only because of the difficulty, but you re-heal Sparks by using fodder. These can range from sheep to chickens to lizards or magic mushrooms. No, that's probably not what they are called, but I like calling them that. Sparks has 3 stages before going completely. Stage 1, yellow. Stage 2, blue. And stage 3, green. If you get hit again after that, he's gone. Sparks is great as a health system, and he also picks up the gems for you, making gem collecting a lot more satisfying and a perfect incentive to make sure that you don't take too much damage. I have always been a fan of this. It's different from a lot of other health systems in games in general. Typically, a character's health is only reflected in animations. so to have it reflected in gameplay is genius and encourages the player to keep sparks as long as possible. You also have lives. You get them out of these, clams. You can also make yourself an individual life just by killing enemies that you've already killed before, and instead of gems, you get glowing blue balls. Just what I wanted. I totally like wasting my time with collecting glowing balls. Lastly, we've got enemies. I like the enemies in this game. They have a lot of charm to them. You got the Norks, Bulls, Shepherds, Natives, Electric Dudes, and Bitch Slappers. No, that's not what they're called, but I always called them that because look at that. Now that is quite the bitch slap. I always really liked the Norks in Twilight Harbor though. They carry guns. Call of Dragon! The best part about these enemies, though, is that they utilize Spyro's moves well. Some enemies are too big, what do you do? Flame. Some enemies have armor, what do you do? Charge. In high caves, there are these giant metal spiders that are too strong to take down, what do you do? Supercharge. Indestructible moving suits of armor, what do you do? Super Flame. Some have projectile attacks, forcing you to charge and then flame, and there's also enemies where you need to wait to attack them. Pretty good. As a whole, Spyro's gameplay isn't necessarily what I want from a collectathon. It's too samey and too simple for me, with no real variety. On top of that, the game is really short and easy, clocking in at 3.5 to 4 hours. It took me specifically 3 hours, 53 minutes, and 43 seconds to complete. Now yes, this isn't a big deal, but the amount of content in this game could be more, especially for a collectathon. However, the level design is where Spyro the Dragon really shines, and is by far the best part of the first game. I mean it. To start, we have the hub worlds. There are 6 worlds in the Dragon Kingdom: Artisans, Peacekeepers, Magic Crafters, Beastmakers, Dreamweavers, and Nork Nexus. Each hub world, except for Nork Nexus, have a wealth of personality. They are colorful and overall memorable. They do a great job with blending in with the rest of the levels.
However, this is both a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it makes going through each world feel like a mini adventure inside of a big adventure, but it's also a bad thing because since they look very similar to each other, it doesn't let any level to thematically feel like their own thing.
Dry Canyon is the worst offender to this, since it looks practically identical to the hub world that it's in. Thing is though, this game still has some absolute bangers when it comes to levels. Some of these are so great that I dedicated an entire video ranking all of them from worst to best. I don't recommend that you watch it or anything, it's quite outdated for me in terms of video making, but it still says something. Some of my favorites are Twilight Harbor, Wizard Peak, Ice Cavern, Dark Passage, and even Treetops. Treetops is a very controversial level among the Spyro community. I'm definitely one of those who will defend this level to hell and back. I don't see why this level is so hated. It's fucking fun! Supercharging from platform to platform is fun. But then we have what is, in my opinion, the peak of Spyro 1. Lofty Castle. This is easily my favorite level in the game and is without a doubt one of my top 10 Spyro levels. It looks beautiful with how the colors clash together, it shifts the gameplay up a bit and gives a bit of a task to do by freeing fairies to progress. There's a supercharged segment, and to cap it all off, the music is great. To finish off the level segment, we should talk about the flight levels. I know that I've already mentioned them in the controls and abilities segment, but they deserve more detail than that. In these levels, you fly around in a small area and either flame or fly through 6 of 4 sets of objects in a limited time, and every single time you either flame or fly through one of them, it gives you a few more seconds of time. I always liked these. It is very satisfying to try and fly through all of these just to get the best time possible. It feels great and is a blast every time. The level design in general is very well done. Not every level hits, there are a couple that I would say are bad, but overall, it's great.
Which is not what I can say about the bosses.
Boss fights in Spyro the Dragon are fucking garbage. It's time for me to take the Spyro fanbase head on with this one. I am going to sum up each boss fight in this game, and then talk about people's reasons for defending these boss fights. Yes, people defend these boss fights, believe it or not, and I'm sorry, All of the points that I keep hearing from either videos or interacting with the fan base online just don't make any fucking sense. So let's talk about each individual boss fight first, shall we? Boss 1, Toasty. He is a sheep with stilts disguised as a shepherd with a pumpkin for a face. What do? Chase him, flame him, 3 times. Boss 2, Dr. Shemp. Too cool for school, apparently. What do? Chase him, dodge pitiful attacks, flame him, 3 times. Boss 3, Blowhard, by far the worst and most lazily designed of the bunch. You know the drill already. Chase him, flame him, 3 times. Boss 4, Metalhead, definitely the best boss fight in the game, but it's still terrible. You destroy his power poles by charging into them in 2 arenas and he's down. It's still way too easy. Boss 5, Jack, or as 14-year-old me called him, Jack Ways.
Jack Ways!
Chase him, dodge pitiful attacks, flame him 3 fucking times. Boss 6, final boss, Nasty Nork. You guessed it, chase him, flame him 2 times!
Insomniac! You didn't even try!
So, in conclusion, these are some terrible boss fights. So now let's talk about 3 major points that I keep hearing from the defenders every single time I criticize the boss fights. Point 1, they have cool designs!
What? How does that automatically make them good boss fights? The whole point of a boss fight is to fight them, not to look at them.
I seriously have no idea how this improves them in any way. Sure, I like a good character design in a game, but boss battles are battles. Character designs don't do anything for the boss fight because they are different things. Because you're fighting them. Pinstripe Potteroo is one of my favorite baddies in the Crash series because of his design. Does that make his boss fight in the first game good? No! It's boring, it's not challenging, so why is it different here? Point 2, the levels are not about them.
Alright, 2 things. 1, why are they even on the level in the first place if they're not the focus? And 2, why are the levels that they are in named after them?
Point 3, final point. They are original!
Oh yeah, because as we all know, Spyro the Dragon's the first game in history to have boss fights take place in the level. Seriously, what's original about them? That they take 3 hits? No, that's been done many times before. They have wacky designs. Just, like, actually tell me why I hear time and time again for them to be called unique. 'Cause I don't see it.
You may think that I'm making shit up, but I'm not. This is actually what some people say to defend them. We thought that defending something like Pink Gold Peach was impossible for anyone to do, but nope. Turns out people will defend anything. I'm not joking when I say this either. If you think about commenting down any of these points that I keep hearing, then I'm just going to ignore you.
However, if you comment a point that I haven't heard hundreds of times, I will respond to it. But these have to be new points. New points that I haven't heard before. Maybe you'll be able to change my perspective a little bit. One more thing, don't put down it's the first in the series arguments, because that's not valid enough.
Alright, now that I got that out of my system, let's continue. One more thing before we move on to, if you do genuinely like these boss fights, then that's perfectly fine. I may sound like I'm trying to change your opinion when I'm not. That was more of a venting portion of the video for the fact that I don't understand where others are coming from. I'm not trying to say that I'm right or anything, okay? So anyway, these bosses are shit. I can't help but feel like Insomniac didn't know what boss fights were back then. What they did know back then was making colorful, lively, and visually appealing graphics. 25 years later, this game still looks sexy. Not to mention the unique draw distance technique that Insomniac used. Typically, draw distances in this era was either masked via camera angle or used it as fog. Spyro, on the other hand, used a method where the further you get away from something, the lower poly it gets. Gems also do disappear, but they still give a hint that something is in the distance because of the shine effects. This is not only impressive, but also allows the player to keep track of where they are just because of the fact that they can see the whole level. As for the levels and overall presentation, it's solid. Each character model and environment is well done, the texture work is nice, it looks very colorful, it's great stuff. It feels both cartoony and fantasy-like, a crossover so seamlessly done. The characters are also decently animated. Not quite as well animated as Crash 2, but still has personality to it, along with Spyro's design being perfect. I like Purple, and he has a nice balance between looking badass and capable, and yet puny at the same time. Again, 25 years later, this game still looks great.
Do you know what's also great? The motherfucking soundtrack!
The soundtrack of this game is one of the most beloved soundtracks on the OG PlayStation, and for good reasons. It fucking slaps! Composed by Stuart Copeland, the music for Spyro the Dragon is really well performed, has a great rock feel to it, and the fact that they fit with the levels so perfectly because of Stuart going out of his way to play the levels to get a feel for them is even better.
They pay me for this.
However... Oh shit.
Out of the 4 Spyro games he's made an OST for, I would argue that this is the weakest of his work on the franchise.
Fuck you!
Now wait! This is still a great soundtrack, but a lot of the tracks kinda blend together a little too much. They're not forgettable or anything, hell, I can remember all of them, but that's because I played this game so many goddamn times.
I can easily pick some absolute banger pieces of music in this game, no problem. Let's listen to some. See? This is still some great music right here, despite its issues.
Alright guys, you probably know what time it is. What happens when you get all of the crystal dragons, gems, and eggs? Is it worth it? Yes, actually.
After beating Nasty Nork, Spyro gets interviewed and mentions that there's still some treasure to find. When you reach 100%, you unlock the final level of the game, Nasty's Loot. This is just a level where you freely fly and collect gems. This is the only time where the simple gameplay works to the level's benefit. A more easy and relaxing objective is honestly the best reward you can ask for. Just explore, collect the remaining gems, and fly to your heart's content. Sure, the height restrictions do suck, and the final thief is a pain to catch, but that very last room with the batch of gems to collect is a sight worth fighting for. Then when you collect the rest of those gems, you are treated with one last cutscene.
Spyro the Dragon, you've defeated Gnasty Gnorc, collected the dragon eggs, saved all the dragons, and recovered every bit of treasure in the Dragon Kingdom. How do you feel?
I feel fired up, Bob. And I'm happy for the dragon world, of course. I certainly wouldn't want to spend the rest of my dragon days butting heads with Nasty Nork and his weird minions.
What's a minion?
Never mind. You know what they say. For every good battle, you need a good adversary. And I felt that Nasty, in spite of his misguided nature, was a worthy opponent. Uh-oh. Here we go again!
It may seem abrupt, but I always liked getting to the end of this game and seeing that final cutscene play. It lets me know that despite the massive problems that I have with this game, god damn it, Spyro 1 is still a good time.
And that's pretty much what my general feelings of this game are. I have a lot of problems with Spyro 1, but I still come back to it time and time again. I'd still say that Spyro the Dragon is a decent introduction to the franchise. It still looks good, the music slaps, and the level design is sweet, but it still leaves room for improvement. The story sucks, the villain sucks, the gameplay, while not bad, isn't really what I want from a collectathon, and those boss fights, again, I dare you to change my mind. I still like this game for what it is, though. On the scale of quality, I'm giving Spyro the Dragon a 7 out of 10. Take it.
Well, that has to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I've been waiting to make a video on this game for quite some time. Also, thank you for 100 subscribers, and at the time of this video being written, I am already almost up to 200 in a span of just 1 month, which is pretty wild. I've been thinking about doing a Q&A to celebrate this, but we'll see whether or not that'll happen. This was Max Rabbit you just watched. See you on the other side.